My name's Laurie Wall, and we're here in the energy city of Estevan, Saskatchewan. So the Old Stone Inn offers travelers or business people the chance to stay in a sort of a homey atmosphere. The bed and breakfast has 3 guest suites, each with their own private bathrooms, common area, sitting room, sort of a game room, and a bit of a library downstairs. And then guests can come upstairs and get the full-on service of breakfast, my favorite meal of the day. I also have a little bit of a booklet in the basement, and it tells people things to do in Estevan, places to go, and some kind of neat things to see as well. Things that make the Old Stone Inn unique, obviously, is the beautiful building. I mean, it's such an eye-catching building. When you drive up, people gasp. It's just gorgeous. It's the oldest building in Estevan, built in 1902. So to keep that sort of feel of things, I have left some things original, like the floor in the church upstairs. But you know, there's some quirky little nooks and things to to check out here. And there's a lot of uniqueness in it. It shows people my own personality, which is eccentric and a little bit quirky. The reason why I opened the Old Stone Inn was I had sold a business in Regina that I had for just about 25 years, and it was sort of at loose ends. The people that bought the business really didn't need my help too long after they took over, and I thought that there would be a longer transition period, and I just found myself kind of walking around in a daze, honestly. So I decided to pack a suitcase, rent out my home, and travel to Europe for 4 months. When I was in Europe, I predominantly stayed in bed and breakfast, and I always had this thought in my mind, a bed and breakfast would be my retirement. When I came back at Christmas time, my dad said to me, you know, there's this old stone church in Estevan that's been for sale for a while. I think you should look at it. I think you can do something with it. And so when they drove me past, I fell in love. And that was it for me. So I viewed the building at that point, and because there wasn't any real characteristics inside that really grabbed me, I kind of shied away from it initially. In January, I ended up going away again. I went to Asia for a month and a half, and the entire time I was in Asia, all I could think about was this building. And I started to write business plans, I started to write menus, I started to put ideas together. And when I came home, I took another look and I looked at it with fresh eyes, and I decided this is going to be my place. I come from a long line of women who really love to entertain and cater to your needs, if you will. My mom and my grandma were both born caterers. They love to put a meal together, and you'd swear that they've been slaving over the stove for hours, but they had everything in the pantry needed so that if people dropped in, and back in the day, people did just drop in, they had something ready. Always a freezer full of baked goods, and always something that they could pull out of the fridge and put together a nice meal and make people feel welcome. And when I got married, the food or the cooking bug bit me hard. And the first meal that I really made was a stuffed Cornish game hen with wild rice and fruit, and it was a fabulous meal. It really was. And that was the first meal that I really put together well. And I got a lot of praise for it. My husband at the time was like, wow, this is the best meal. And we started inviting friends over for dinner parties, and people were always commenting on how great my food was. And I think that's really the start of the hospitality and the chefing thing, was just getting that feedback, and that was it. I was hooked hard. One of the things that I love the most about having the church space for me to sort of play in as a chef is that around Estevan, it's phenomenal for local producers. I had a beautiful lady come in and drop off beef. I've had a man come in and drop off some pork. There are pork producers here around the area. I've had people dropping off vegetables. The area is ripe with producers. So it's really cool to be able to take a step back from doing those big events that I was doing in Regina and just play with food and make whatever I want. I think people here in Estevan were ready to trust me and just have them come in, sit at my big long table, and I make them a great 4, 5, 6 course dinner. I think people were really ready for that, and I was ready for that, to take a step back and just do some really cool things with food you can't do with a big group. The part that I love the most is that people here are trusting me. My events have been sold out, and I get to create whatever I want to make. So it just depends on what's fresh and cool that I can find out there. And honestly, Estevan's grocery stores have been pretty good. I was able to find tomatillos, if you can imagine it, just the other day. So, you know, we have the ingredients here. I have the passion for this, and people really seem to want it. And it's exciting for me to do that. I chose Estevan as the location for a few different reasons. First of all, my parents are from Alameda. I grew up in Alameda, and they still live in Alameda. I won the parent lottery, and for years and years, I was either away when I traveled or took time off. I left the country and got away from things. With my business in Regina, the catering business, it was extremely busy. And I missed birthdays and I missed Christmases, and I wasn't focused when I was there because I had a million things going on. And I just wanted to spend as much time as I possibly can with my 2 favorite people in the whole world. So there's that aspect as well. And they've actually just sold their home in Alameda, and they're moving next door to a senior condo right beside me. So I'm super thrilled with that. Also, Estevan's a really cool part of the world. We're really close to the United States border, so just to jump across the line and, you know, maybe hop a flight from Minot to Point South, it's really quite easy. It's got a great community feel, and also that agricultural thing that's in my heart. I'm a farmer's daughter, and I really find a connection with the producers around here. And the community has been absolutely phenomenal to me. Like, I can't even believe how wonderful people have been since I've moved here. I have ladies dropping off their China teacups and saucers just to, you should have this, you're doing afternoon tea. You know, I have people dropping food off here and things like that. It's just a really warm, welcoming community, and I'm super happy to be part of it. So the bed and breakfast part of the business is my favorite part. And the rooms are all unique, and they're a little bit different in size, and they have their own characteristic, and I've named each room. So instead of room 1, 2, and 3, they're Silk Road, Happy Trails, and the Harvest room. And they all sort of evolved naturally with the decor. So as I'm putting away my things and I had my personal belongings shipped down from Regina, I started going through, and I realized that I have traveled pretty extensively through Asia, and I had a ton of cool Asian sort of things. I made one room, you know, with some Vietnamese kind of belongings, or different sort of Asian sort of themed things. So Silk Road became the name of the room. Same with the Harvest room. So I have prairie lilies and some yellow and orange kind of decor, and it's just like a warm kind of a cozy little space. And then in the other room, the Happy Trails, it's all cowboy. And I mean, I must have wanted to be a cowgirl in a past life, or I don't know what I was thinking, but I had a ton of cowboy decor, and so did my mom. So put it together and kind of made this little cowboyish room. It's the same as the church upstairs. It's going to evolve. It's going to change. And that's one thing that I love about myself, is that I totally embrace change. And I think the rooms will end up changing over time. I like to keep things fresh and interesting, so that's going to probably evolve. Then people come upstairs for breakfast, so that's the cool part for me. they get a choice between savory and sweet breakfast, and I get to make whatever I want. But I always am shooting to get that wow factor, like for them to sit down and I put them the breakfast in front of them and they're like, this is amazing. So I'm looking for that, so I'm always trying to one-up myself. How I see the business sort of evolving is I would love to see the inn host guests that come back. So like those monthly business people that always are coming back, and we build a friendship and form a bond from that. And would feel to them like, you know, they're coming home to their eccentric weird aunt's house or something. And so I would love to see people, you know, stay and want to come back, and that I provide something that intrigues people enough to book solely just to stay at the inn. Upstairs in the church, I sort of see things evolving into like more of maybe a community space where people feel like this is some place that they can host their own dinner. I know a lot of my friends would love to host dinner parties, but you know, they don't have the space at home or honestly the capabilities of throwing together a dinner for 6 or 8 people. So people could book for that, and they could come in and I could just cook for them. You know, one of the things that I'm really hoping to achieve and what I'm looking for the most out of all of this is not just to be proud of myself for what I've built and what I've done, but for people in the community to be also proud to show the place, recommend that people come and see the church and the inn downstairs. You even just driving by, I know people are looking at it and saying, oh great, what's going on in there? My logo was a bit of an eye catcher, and it's got a little bit of an Irish or a Scottish feel to it, and my heritage is Scottish. So I'm sort of playing on that, and with the scones for breakfast and the shortbread cookie when people arrive, sort of playing off that heritage thing. But I'm really hoping that the community continues to embrace me as much as they can and as much as they have. I'm just happy to be a part of the community here. I just want to bring some really great things here, and hopefully people appreciate it and take part in it. I'll tell you one thing about scones. There's never a bad time of the day to eat them. Scones for breakfast, and I love making scones for the bed and breakfast guests. Scones for afternoon tea. Such a nice little bite with some clotted cream or some jam. There's no bad time to have scones. So I'm going to start with, it's a sort of a basic recipe, but I'm going to show you how you can turn the scones into any sort of flavor that you want as well. So it's not just a plain scone, but we're going to add some cool things to it as well. So I have my bowl in front of me, and I have my ingredients all ready to go. I'm going to start with putting flour in the bowl, and I'm going to add about 2.5 cups of flour. So just sort of roughly measure that. And I'm not being precise with these measurements because I've made scones many times, and I know that my scones always turn out great, so no worries there. So it's about 2.5 cups of flour, and I'm just going to add a little sprinkle of salt because salt is a flavor enhancer, so all the ingredients are going to taste exactly the way they're supposed to. So they won't be salty, they'll just taste like scones. So we're going to do that, a little bit of salt, and then baking powder, and that's going to make things rise up really nice. And I'm going to put about 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder in there. I'm just going to take a spoon and just kind of stir that around and just kind of incorporate those all together. So that's good. Next part is my butter. And I've got a pound of butter here, which is 2 cups. So I'm going to cut the butter directly in half, so that's going to give me a cup. And then if I take it down a half again, that's half a cup each. I'm going to use about half a cup to make my scones. So I just start with it as room temperature, a little bit colder than room temperature, and just cut it into some bite-sized chunks. Let me tell you a funny story about butter. I'm Scottish as my heritage, and I found out that my relatives are from the Kippen area of Scotland. So I took a bus up to Kippen when I was visiting Scotland, and after weeping with joy at how beautiful it was, I found myself at an inn where I ordered a charcuterie board and a pint of beer. As I'm eating on the charcuterie board, I wondered, what is this amazing cheese on this board? These little round dollops of cheese, they were so flavorful and delicious. So I asked the waitress, what kind of cheese is this? And she just laughed and said, why, that's butter, love. So Scottish butter is the most delicious thing ever. I've taken the half a cup of butter and I've added it to my flour, baking powder, and salt mixture, and I'm just breaking that in. As you can see, it's just kind of coarse pea-size bites of butter in there. So just kind of incorporate that all in. And now I'm going to add some sugar, because everything's better with a little bit of sugar. And then this is about 1/3 of a cup. And you don't want the scones to be too sugary, so about 1/3 of a cup is going to be nice. And into that it goes, and we just mix it around a little bit. Now this is the part where I'm going to grate some lemon zest. Not every scone recipe calls for lemon, but a good portion of them do. So I'm going to use my zester, which is one of my favorite kitchen tools, honestly. And I'm just going to zest down some of that lemon rind. And you want to be careful with zesting lemon, because you don't want to get too much of the white pit in it, zesting the nice, lovely yellow part. Now we don't need to do the whole thing. I would say probably, this is a pretty good sized lemon, so probably just half the lemon is good. We're not making a ton of scones today. And that's one thing about scones, really, they don't keep, honestly, that well. When you make them, you're going to want to enjoy them right away. So fresh out of the oven is the best way to have a scone. So after you incorporate the lemon zest and give that a stir around, we're going to add our wet to it. And by wet, I mean an egg, and I'm using yogurt. So we're going to crack the egg and just give it a little bit of stir around and break it up a bit. But you can use buttermilk, is always good. I just didn't happen to have any, and I always have Greek yogurt on hand. I love it on my granola in the morning. Now by some, I'm thinking a little more than half a cup. And we're just going to add that right into the mixture. We can add more if we need to, but we can't add less, so we're a little bit skimpy on it to start with. And we just start stirring that around and just give it a good stir until it starts to come together and starts to sort of get a little bit tougher to stir. So just kind of incorporating that wet into the dry. And now back off, because I'm going to get my hands in here and get messy. So now you can see that it's starting to clump up a little bit. We'll get my hands in here and give it, and if it starts to stick to your hands too much, you know, maybe add a little bit more flour. And if it doesn't come together in a bowl very easily, then just add a little bit more yogurt or milk or buttermilk. You can have also maybe heard the term sour milk. And to sour milk, it's 1 cup of milk and you add a teaspoon of vinegar. But buttermilk is kind of a rich way of using sour milk. Knead that together. We're just gonna dump it out on the surface and continue kneading a little bit. So this amount of dough is going to make 2 rounds of scones. So I'm just going to cut it in half in that point and just leave that aside for a second. Now, just to make sure that my round scone mixture doesn't stick to the counter, I'm just going to put a little bit of flour on the surface and just rub that in. And you press that out into a round disc. And you want to leave it fairly thick to get that nice puffy scone look. And so once that's in a disc like that, we're going to score it. And you don't want to cut it straight through. You just want to leave some marks in it. And I'm going to cut for 6, I guess that's 8. There we go. 8 pieces of scones. And put that on parchment. Now this one, we're going to do something different with it. Now we've got it in a round bowl like this, but this is where you can add different sort of ingredients to make your scones flavored. I'm going to add blueberries to this because I always think that lemon blueberries go really nice together. And I don't want to add those blueberries too early because the juice of them is going to turn things purple. And I don't want purple scones. I do want that nice whiteness of the scone, but I want the flavor of the blueberries. So I'm going to take some blueberries. I'm just going to poke them in there. And then you can use as many as you want. It's your preference. So get them kind of poked in there like that. And then you can just kind of turn it over. Let's see what this looks like. But as you can see, it's just kind of breaking up in there too. So you want to be careful not to have the blueberries turning your dough purple. So blueberry lemon scones coming up. And we're just going to pat that into a disc again and score it. Now, when you roll the scones out, I always like to make my scones in a round disc, but you can use a cookie cutter and make round scones as well. But that's just the blueberry lemon. And just onto there it goes. And we're going to pop that in the oven for about 11, 12 minutes. That's being very precise, at about 400 degrees. So let's just do that. Alrighty, the scones have come out of the oven and holy moly, don't those look good? Wow. So I'm going to show you how I finish these off. And I can't wait to get into those. So I'm going to take a little bit of butter. And I'm going to take the butter on the back of my spoon, just kind of like that. And I'm just going to, because they're hot, piping from the oven, I'm just going to rub the tops of them. Get a little softened butter on there. Just rub that around. And just melt that butter on top. So then we're going to, after it's all kind of, greasy from butter, I'm going to take some icing sugar in a strainer and just top it over. If you don't have icing sugar, don't despair. Another way to do this would be to brush the tops of them before you put them in the oven with a little bit of buttermilk or a little tiny bit of yogurt, just a little bit, and then just granulated sugar over them as well. Either way is fine, but that's the scone done Laurie's way. Can't wait to get into those. After those scones, don't you just feel like shortbread? I love giving the guests a little cookie of shortbread and a cup of tea when they first arrive at the inn. And making shortbread is no sweat at all. So I'm going to not make it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to make it using technology. And using technology means using a food processor. Very simple ingredients. There's only 4 ingredients to shortbread: flour, sugar, butter, and a dash of salt. So I'm going to put all the ingredients in the food processor, and then I'm going to pulse them. So I'm going to start by putting in a couple of cups of flour in there, a little bit of sugar, and that's about 1/3 of a cup. So I'm going to add 2 of them because I like my shortbread a little bit sweet. A little bit of salt, and then some butter. Cut that butter in. And the butter's at room temperature, so it's going to incorporate really nicely. And I want to just kind of watch it and see when it starts to pull together. If your shortbread is a little bit dry, usually it means you need to pulse it longer. But I'm just watching that closely. Letting it come together in there. That's still pretty dry, so I'm gonna add a little bit more butter to it and watch it come together. You don't want to add too much, or you play that back and forth game. And you can see it's kind of jiggling around a little bit more, so it's really starting to come together now. Okay. Now, I'll show you what it looks like just right out of the machine. If you can see that, you can see that they've come together quite nicely. That's perfect. Now you can put that in, say, an 8x8 square pan, but I like doing things a little bit bouncy. So I've got, and it's like a spring former, but false bottom, so it's going to be easy to get out afterwards. I've got a fluted tart pan, and I'm going to press the shortbread into that. Now I've greased it, and the reason being is if those little fluted edges break trying to getting out, I start to cry. So I'm going to grease it to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I can just dump that in there, just give it a little shake to sort of even it out. And if you see any big chunks of butter, you can just kind of break those up with your hands. And there we start to press it in. And this takes a little bit of time. And so we're just pressing as best we can in here. Now, this is the same as the scone in the sense that you can flavor shortbread in lots of different ways. I did have a lemon zester out, and it's perfectly fine to zest some lemon into the shortbread. Now, you're not going to want to add any wet ingredients like those blueberries that we did for the scones. So if you did want to make a cranberry shortbread, you would make it with dried cranberries instead of the fresh ones like you would a scone. You can also add like lemon zest and poppies for a lemon poppy seed shortbread, or you can substitute the white sugar with brown and add some cinnamon and nutmeg and make it all kind of warm, spicy shortbread like that. So once you've decide on what kind you want, or maybe you want a few different kinds while you're making shortbread. They freeze exceptionally well too, so it's always nice to keep them in the freezer, pull them out when you've got company. Or for me, when somebody drops by that wants to stay at the end. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now I had my oven to bake the scones up to 425, but we don't want that to make a shortbread. We want to cook it longer and a little bit lower. So about 325 is usually pretty good. So once we have the shortbread pressed into the pan, the next step is either scoring or poking holes in it. And it's just so that things don't bubble up too much, and we're just going to make little pokes. Sometimes you almost have to flour the edges of that just so then it doesn't stick so much too. And so just dot that around with the tines of your fork. Perfect. And so I turn my oven off to get the temperature a little bit lower, but I'm just going to give it a wide open and let all the hot air out of it for just a second. And then I'm going to pop this in. And then we're going to turn it on bake, and so let's say 325. Perfect. Now let's put the timer on. Let's do 22 minutes, because why not? 22 minutes, and then we'll give it a chuck. There's some shortbread in my future. Yay! Now I've got a couple of other delicious food things that I whipped up this morning, and literally whipped them up this morning. Both of them are really, really easy to do, and this gets back to that wanting to feed people and wanting to cater to people's needs and things like that. So my bread is a focaccia bread, and I always say that everybody should learn how to bake at least one kind of bread or buns, also a pie. very Saskatchewan, down-home, farm-style cooking always includes a pie for dessert. My pie today is an apple pie and traditional cold water pastry crust. So apples and cinnamon in that pie. And I just love to make those traditional sort of down-home basic favorites, but I like to add a little bit of a twist and make it my own thing. But this pie it's gonna be a killer. Now the bread is an Italian-style focaccia bread, but I load it with herbs and garlic, and it's a really delicious bread. And nice and soft bread. Makes a great sandwich. But that is another thing that I really like making at the end is fresh bread. And usually it's this focaccia that I end up whipping up. It doesn't take long. There's not a ton of ingredients. Again, bread's quite basic, but I really do enjoy baking both of those. And always everything from scratch. So I've taken the shortbread out of the oven, and if you can just take a little bit of a look there, it's just starting to turn brown around the edges, but we don't want it too brown and too overcooked, but just nice and done. Now that's something that experience gives you a little bit of what doneness is, but I'll just say it's a little bit of browned around the edges. Now I can put the shortbread, or I can bake it in a fluted pan because it's got that bottom that you can pop out. And you can just push that right up, and you can see that it's moving there. Now, because I wasn't able to actually score it, I'm going to take it out of the pan now. So let me just see how I'm going to do that without burning myself. So I'm going to drop that. There we go. Where there's a will, there's a way. Now that just kind of cracked and broke a little bit, but if I press it in, now it's still quite warm, that should be able to glue together and you're not going to have any problem with that one. I'll just set it on my trivet, and we're just going to take a nice big knife, and we're not going to cut it right through, but we're just going to score it like that. And then to make the slices even, it's easier just to cut it into a quarter and score it in the quarter. And now we'll do it in half on these again. And we'll do it in half again to make the nice even cut marks. And now we don't want a huge piece of shortbread because it is rich. So we'll just continue to run around the disc and just scoring it. We will leave that to cool, and it should break away quite easy. And any little parts that break off, you just put them in your hand like this and go, shortbread. There we go. Scottish shortbread, made my way. You can reach the Old Stone Inn by our website. That's quick and easy, and on the today's age of technology, that's probably the best bet. You can always just give us a call for sure as well. But check out the website, and you can book online. And I have most of the other travel partners involved. Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com. They're all you can utilize those to book a room as well. Go online, go on the website, and you'll see an event tab. And when you click on that, a calendar will come up, and it'll show the events that I have booked for the month or into the months. And if you want to host your own event, you can just check that out and see what's available for dates. And then just give me a call. So my mom's side of the family is Scottish, and that's kind of the side that I've embraced more. Last year, I went to Scotland and stayed in our family's castle, Duntroon Castle in the West Argyll area. And while this isn't Duntroon, this is my castle, and that's how I kind of feel about it. When I was in Scotland and looked up the family and stayed in the castle, I found out that our clan motto, and it's Clan Malcolm, our clan motto was in Ardua Tendent, and that it translates to we love to do hard things. And I think that really my motto as well. I do love to do really hard things. I love to push myself. I love to step outside the box. I think that I've done that here, and even if things completely went south, I'm here and I did it, and I'm really, really proud that I am where I am right now.